Thank you, Assalamualaikum. So I kind of wish I thought about maybe what the audience would be a little bit more, but whatever I share with you today can absolutely be translated for internships that you might be applying for, summer jobs you might be applying for. So at any point that you are in your early career or later career, all of this becomes relevant. And at the end, if you have any specific questions for your specific opportunity that you're looking at, let me know and we can talk about it. So thank you for the introduction, Freen. So we'll start, before you talk about resumes and you talk about interviewing, everything starts with a brand. So what do you guys notice about all of these logos up here? What's that? Do you guys all know what these represent? You know what all of these brands are. So all of these logos are of successful companies. Companies that have built a brand for themselves. You know exactly what it is by looking at it. You know what they stand for. You know what they sell. So the same way that companies build brands, it's really important that you build your own personal brand. And we found that this has become more important in the age where competitive advantage for students and people starting out their career becomes more prevalent. So a brand is anything. It's a symbol, it's a sound, it's a tone of voice, it's the way you carry yourself. And we see it on a business level, but like I said, we need it more and more for who we are today. And for better or for worse, whether you like it or not, we all have our own personal brand. So when you think of Saliha, you're going to think of something specific, something that she represents, a strong woman in the community, really active, very intelligent. That's a brand that she's built for herself and everything that she's done. As you start applying for jobs, as you start applying for colleges, as you think of all of that, your resumes, your applications, all of that starts to represent who you are, and that helps you to build your own personal brand. And that's whether you are just starting off and you're looking for a job or you're in a current job. At Nestle we say, what's the buzz around this person? And that's everything between who you interact with your coworkers, your boss, maybe the person that serves your food or cleans the bathroom. All of that is the buzz, is who you are known as and what represents you. So as you're starting off in your careers, and all of these, LinkedIn Career Builder could be replaced with colleges or jobs you're interning for, you start building this brand typically online. It's really hard these days to build a face-to-face brand when you're just starting out. So you want to make sure that your brand is consistent across the platform that you are applying for. But it's important to think of your brand as not just one place, but you want to broadcast it everywhere. So especially when you're starting out, you want to not just talk to friends and family. So I can't tell you how many times I've been maybe looking for an opportunity and someone says, oh, I know someone who works for a senator and can probably get you an internship in his office, or says, I know someone who works at this retail store that can get you a summer job. So make sure people know what it is that you're looking for. Social media. So I'm sure you all have a Facebook and a Twitter. Just keep in mind those things represent you as well. And when you are applying for schools or jobs, whatever it is, they're going to look you up in those social media sites. So make sure that it is professional and it is what you want yourself to be represented as. Even as students, I recommend that you have a LinkedIn. If you're a professional, I recommend that you have a LinkedIn, and that is developed, and basically it's your resume online. I can't tell you the amount of recruiters that use LinkedIn as their main source to source candidates, whether you're looking or not. Recruiters, if you are in the job market currently, there are tons of not just job placement companies, but specific recruiters that are out there looking, and to connect with them virtually is really, really a great way to get yourself out there and to network. And then of course companies themselves. So again, whether it's an internship or a job you're going after, it's okay to reach out directly to those companies and try and connect with folks directly for those opportunities. But the main point is don't be shy. You need to get yourself out there when you're looking for your next opportunity. And the best time to look for a job, I always say, is when you don't need one, right? So continually have your resume updated, all of these social media sites updated. You have power when you have a position and you don't need one and people are coming to you. It's always great to have an opportunity that's available when you're not necessarily stressed out or desperate for one. So always be open to an opportunity. If you're on LinkedIn and a recruiter connects with you and says, hey, I have this job and your skill set looks like it's great for it, would you be interested? whether you're in the market or not for it, you respond to that person. You say, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm not currently, looking for a job, but I'd love to connect with you for a few minutes and give you my background or understand what you're looking for, because 6 months, 1 year, 3 years down the line, you may need to reach back out to that person. And the fact that you took 5 minutes to make a connection, they're going to remember that. So never turn down an opportunity to connect. And if you are looking for a job, and if you are looking for an internship or a summer job, the best thing to do is to kind of start from the basics. Pie in the sky. What are you looking for? What jobs would you like to have? What companies would you like to work for? So start big, and then you can work your way down and see what opportunities are available. But don't limit yourself from the beginning. It's not always about searching what's out there and available, but what do you want, and start from there. So let's talk about resumes. So a resume is a great tool for companies to understand who you are, and it's basically your advertisement, and it represents who you are. So if you already have a resume, continually keep it updated. Every job that you have, every new responsibility, maybe you get a promotion, it's really important to keep that updated and make sure that it's just constantly current. You never know when you never know when you're going to need to say, yeah, here, take a look at my resume, or that opportunity does come up. So it's a great idea to keep it updated. The resume is really your story, right? So make sure whatever you put on this is honest and is actually representing you. A lot of people say, oh, just fluff up this and fluff up that, and they're never going to know. But at the end of the day, you're representing yourself, and if it's not honest and it's not truly who you are, then it's not going to be a great representation when you're applying for your job or your internship. And for just starting out as students, I probably wouldn't have anything more than 1 page. But if you're later on in your careers, people freak out if they have more than 1 page resume. That's okay. 2 pages works too, especially if you have some great experiences to share. There's different types of resumes. So for those who are already really established in the workforce, you have a targeted resume, so you know exactly the job title you're looking for, you know exactly the qualifications that they are. A targeted resume really sets up your summary of qualifications in the beginning and then goes into your job experiences. This is for me probably the way that I set up my own resume, because I know exactly that I'm in the HR field and the jobs I want are in HR, and I know what qualifications I have in Charlotte to get that job. For students, probably the best type of resume is chronological, so you'll start with your education, because that's the most relevant to you, and you'll start with, if you're in your first year of college, you'll start with that. If you're in high school, if you're in junior high. So depending on where you are, you'll put in your education first, and then any volunteer experience that you have, but make sure that it's from present, and then it goes backwards. And then there's also functional. So this is basically, you have a particular skill set. You're not really out looking for a certain title, but you're putting all of your skill sets kind of at the main focus. Maybe you're a software developer and you're looking for anything within the software field. You want to put every skill that you have as the main focus of your resume. The different types, you don't need to know what type of resume should I have, but the idea is that you're really representing yourself well through your resumes. A couple things to watch out. Please proofread your resume. Doesn't matter if you have 30 years in your field or it's your first resume. The biggest turnoff that you will ever find is misspellings or typos or whatever it may be. Please make sure you proofread it. Remember, this is not just the content as representation, but this is how you present yourself. If you have spelling mistakes in your first representation to an employer, you may not be the right candidate for the job who can't pay attention to detail, or it allows an employer to start making assumptions about you, right? So you don't want that. So please proofread. So this is just one little pet peeve of me personally is make sure your verb tense is consistent throughout. So if you have past experiences, make sure your verb tense is in the past. If you're in your current job, make sure your verb tense is currently. So I currently assist team members or employees to do blah blah blah. If it's in the past, you assisted. It's really small, but these are the pet peeves that a lot of people have. Hiring managers. Make sure you really list your biggest achievements and results that are measurable. So Let's say you were the president of your club, right? And it's great to say all the things that you did as club president, but I want to know the biggest, most important things. You raised $500 to send to cancer research. So what are the really impactful things that someone can put a number to or something actionable to? So this is where you want to reduce some of the fluff words, and you want to put very measurable results that you were able to achieve in your positions. So formatting. So a lot of times people try and cram all of this information onto their resume, and it becomes really hard to read and really hard to see, and it's just kind of an eyesore. A lot of times, recruiters or hiring managers will spend less than 10 seconds looking at a resume. If it does not look good and it's not easy to read, they're probably not going to read it at all, and we'll just kind of toss it to the side. So this is something you want to keep in mind as you are formatting your resume. No pictures. They don't need to see your selfies on your resume. They don't want to know your personal information. They don't want to know if you're in a relationship. It's not Facebook. They don't want to know where you're from. They don't want to know your birthday. And you'll be surprised how many people actually put this information on their resumes. It's actually against the law for recruiters to ask any of this information in an interview. By nature, we are human, and we tend to judge people to say, oh, well, this person might be too young, they can't really handle this job, or oh, if they're married, they're probably not going to have the time to put into the job, 50, 60 hours. So that's not information you want to give right off of the bat. This is based on your experiences and your skills and your abilities. So another really important thing that people forget to include on the resume is these interpersonal or soft skills that people have. So it's great to have technical skills. It's great that you have your master's in computer science and you can do whatever people in computer science do. But there are also these interpersonal qualities that will tell an employer if you're the right fit for a role. Things like being a good listener or being adaptable, accepting feedback, effective communicator, someone who's very self-aware. So basically when I was starting my job search and I said, okay, I need to figure out what my strengths are, I would talk to my sister. My sister's really good at pointing out what I'm good and bad at. So talk to people that who are close to you that can kind of help you figure out what your strengths are, maybe things that are your weakness. And it's really important to put these strengths on your resume because it builds a kind of a holistic picture of who you are as a person. But don't put something on there that you're not. So if you tend to interrupt people when they talk, I'd probably not put that you're a good listener on there because you're just going to contradict yourself, right? And that'll come out in an interview really, really easily. So make sure you're being honest with what you put on your resume. Okay, so you've done a fantastic resume and it looks really great and you submitted it to all these websites, and so now you're going to get an interview, right? They've called you and they said, come on in, we want to talk to you. So the purpose of an interview is to make sure that you have the ability to shine, to show your abilities, your talents, your interests, to basically now advertise yourself not just on paper but in person. And it also gives you a chance to understand the employer. So hopefully you've done your research and we'll talk about that. But to allow you to say, am I a good fit for the company that I'm trying to work for as well. So an interview goes both ways. You're being interviewed, but you should also be interviewing the company as well. So there's a few types of interviews that you may or may not go through in your process, depending on how big your company is, what type of company it is. But it'll probably start with a phone call, and that's usually your phone screening. This is not, a formal interview, but it's your first step in the door. This person is trying to see, okay, I saw a resume, and you look good on paper, she looked good on paper, but does that match up to what I hear over the phone? So it'll probably start with some simple questions on the phone, maybe some examples of your past work, and that's really the person that's going to decide whether you move on or not. So next you'll probably go through a face-to-face interview, and there's different types. And as we go through these, they get a little bit more intimidating. So there's obviously your simple one-on-one interviewing. It's just one person and then one person interviewing you. Sometimes there's group interviews where there may be one person and like 5 people interviewing for the same job at one time. That can be a little bit scary if you're not prepped for that. There may be a panel interview. So you're sitting in a room by yourself interviewing, and there's 5 people interviewing you, all asking you questions. You may have a tag team interview, so 2 people, one person asking the questions, one person taking notes, and yourself. More and more larger companies, we're seeing them do behavior-based interviews. So they're asking for really specific questions about your past experience. Tell me about a time that you made a mistake at work or at school, and what did you do to fix it? Tell me about a time you had too many priorities and you had to figure out how to manage them. So they want to know specifically how you dealt with situations. So research shows that your past experiences will indicate the way that you handle future situations. So you'll probably see, whether they're colleges or internships, these are the types of questions that they're going towards. And then I don't see this too much in my field, but there's stress-based interviews, and this is where they will kind of stress you out and see how you react. A lot of case studies may be that way, and maybe like a lot of high-powered sales positions. Not anything that I've ever done or been a part of. But expect more than one interview. Especially if it's a bigger company, you may go through anywhere from 2 to, we've put people through 7 interviews. So just be patient through the process. So when you prep for an interview, so this is going to be for students, for people in their career, so your preparation. You need to know exactly who you're interviewing for and with. If you don't know this company, and if you don't know what they do, and if you don't know their mission, you probably should not show up to that interview. Probably the most annoying thing that a hiring manager will confront is someone who doesn't know anything, not just about their company, but about their the position that they're applying for. So make sure you know where you're going, who you're talking to, why you want the position. The last thing I want to hear on the phone is, wait, what job is this for? And what does that job do? Wait, who is this? So make sure you know exactly who you've applied for, and when they call you back, you know exactly what to expect regarding that employer. Practice questions. So when you talk to a recruiter, it's okay to say, hey, what kind of interview is this going to be? And they should be able to tell you, out of all the ones I've listed, give you an idea. Will they ask behavior-based questions? Is it a more informal conversation? It's okay to get an idea of what kind of interview you're going to be walking into, because that will help you prepare. And then if it is behavior-based, you go on Google and you search behavior-based questions, and hundreds will come up. So you'll have tools to be able to practice those and kind of see what those look like up front. But even if you don't know what the questions are or what type of questions, the most important thing is to know your stories. And what I mean by that, you go through a lot of experiences in life, whether it's personal, or it's group projects, or it's situations at work. Some of these are much bigger than others. Those are the stories that you want to be able to share of how you dealt with situations. For a lot of my younger employees, as they're starting out and being promoted from one role to the next, I remind them, as you go into this next role and you face the challenges and you face the big projects, keep like a small journal. And every time you get through something, write that example down, because as you continue to promote, you're going to want to use those examples in the future to say, we went through this crazy project that 4 people were on, 2 of them were not doing their job. Here's everything that I did. This was my story of how I got through this. We tend to say we don't want you to be overly confident or cocky, but this is a time in an interview for you to shine. So you want to say a little bit of I, right? So even if it's a team effort, I want to know what you did. I want to know how you impacted things, what you accomplished. So make sure you know your stories really well and all the things that you did to accomplish and overcome the challenges that you may have faced. And plan ahead. So this is a couple things. So plan ahead, know where you're going, right? Get directions to the place and maybe map it out ahead of time. Be prepared for traffic. Show up early. Know what you're gonna wear ahead of time. The worst thing to do is to freak out the morning before and you're like, oh my God, what hijab do I wear? What shoes do I wear? It doesn't match my purse, So make sure you plan this out a day before, 2 days before. Know kind of your sales pitch. Basically, be prepared. Have a very conscious effort of being prepared. Eat breakfast. Get a good night's sleep before. You probably don't want to eat like spicy foods the night before, or drink too much water in the morning. So just be cognizant of being prepared for when you go in for your interview. And as I mentioned, ask the recruiter for any tips and advice about how you can be best prepared and do well in your interview. A lot of times a recruiter wants you to get hired, so they're going to want to help you out before your interview. So there's a few steps within the interview, right? So your first impressions. You planned ahead, you did all your homework, and now you're there, and you're ready to interview. The first impressions are the most important. Within the first 30 seconds of meeting someone, they're probably going to make some assumptions about you. So you want to do the best that you can to control that. So when you see someone, you greet them, you firmly shake their hand. The worst thing to have is a limp hand when you're trying to shake someone's hand. So a firm handshake 2 or 3 times. Don't go on for a while, just a couple times. Make eye contact, smile, be personable, and have some confidence. There you go, exactly. And be friendly to everyone. You're going to come in contact with a few people from maybe an admin or someone that's sitting at a desk, maybe a janitor. You may interact with someone in an elevator. They could be the person you're interviewing with, your future boss. So be friendly to everyone that you interact with. That's really important. And then follow the interviewer's lead. If they say, oh, thank you for coming, you can go ahead and have a seat here. Don't say, no, actually, I'm going to sit over here. I'm good. Right? So just you'd be surprised. So just follow the lead of, whatever instructions you're given. So during the interview, you want to listen carefully. The worst thing that you can do is answer a question that was not asked to you. So make sure that you listen to what's being asked. It's okay to pause for a second. It's okay to say, yeah, let me just think about that answer for a few seconds. So that when you answer, you're giving full, complete answers for the question that's being asked. Sometimes people will answer a question really quickly and then they start to ramble and they go on for 2 or 3 minutes and then they're like, wait, can you repeat the question? So it's okay to ask to repeat the question, but usually before you start going on in a long saga of your answer. Ask insightful questions. Show the knowledge, and as you ask your questions, show knowledge that you've already, researched the company that you're for. You've researched this position. But it allows the interviewer to know that you're really interested in this job. Don't ever say that you don't have questions. And as you give your answers, make sure you're giving good examples and details. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're in a team project, and you say, oh yeah, my team, we had this group project and a couple people didn't really do their job, and so I had to pick up the slack, and then we did it and we got an A. That's great, but I learned nothing about anything except that you had a project and you got an A. What's everything in between that you did? Give me some details that will show me the way that you're able to handle a difficult situation, that you're able to accomplish something. Without the details, I have nothing to go off of. And once the interview is over, you can take a deep breath, but you'll kind of want to repeat your sales pitch, right? Why are you the best candidate for this role? Ask for the job, ask for the internship, ask for whatever it is that you're there to accomplish. Some people, may feel shy and be like, I really feel like I'm the best person for this job. I want this job. That's kind of like, you're confident, but you're also saying, I'm putting myself out here, and I'm here for a reason. I want it. But go ahead and reiterate that. Take the employer's business card or something that you can connect with them after. So a thank you note can go a long way. If I interview 10 people and one person sends me a thank you note, I've now had the chance to see that person's name again. Maybe they are sharing a little bit more about their experience in that thank you note. 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna think about that person probably a little bit more than the rest of the group. And it's okay to ask what's the next steps in the process. So, what can I expect next? They'll probably tell you they're interviewing several candidates. It may take 2 to 3 weeks. We'll make sure we get in contact with you. You just want to understand the time frame for that. So I mentioned, go ahead and make sure you send a letter and email thanking the interviewer for their time. And since you now know the timeline, if you haven't heard anything within that timeline of what they mentioned, it's okay to follow up. But just keep in mind, sometimes these processes, especially for big companies, can take much longer than they're supposed to. Sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple months. So just be patient in the process, and it's okay to follow up maybe once, maybe twice at most, but calling every day after is probably not a good idea. So just a couple interview don'ts, right? So these are super common sense, but you'd be surprised of how many people don't think of them. So no bad manners and no being rude. You're there to get a job. So whoever you interact with, you want to be very nice to, and treat everyone with respect regardless of who they are in that organization. Don't speak poorly about your past employers, your team members, your teachers, your teammates. That negativity will completely change the tone of your entire interview, so don't do that. You may not have had work for 6 months and you really, really need a job, but don't appear to be needy or desperate, because it changes the sense of your motivation to the employer, right? They want to know that you want this job because you've really studied this company and it's the right role for you, not that you're really willing to take anything that anyone gives you. Don't whine or complain. This is just a general rule in life. Don't whine or complain, but it's especially true during interviews. Don't fidget in your chair. So you have to control your nerves. I know interviewing is super nerve-wracking experience, but the last thing I want is someone like tapping a pen while I'm talking to them, or they're giving me an answer, or playing with their hair or their scarf, or like doing this. Don't do that, okay? Because it really throws off your ability to connect with the person that you're talking to, and at least for me, I stop listening. And I'm just like staring at this pen that keeps going. And I will ask people, if you could just stop tapping your pen, I'd appreciate it. You know, and then that makes the person a little nervous and uncomfortable and self-conscious, but so kind of just be aware of that. Just, you know, sit with your hands in front of on your lap and like breathe slowly if you need to. But it's really important to try your best to control your nerves. Don't be overly confident. So confidence is good, but there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And you'd be surprised, sometimes we have a fantastic candidate, has all the qualifications, but they are just a little too arrogant for us, and it just doesn't feel right. So a lot of the times, interviews are not just about your qualifications, but are you the right fit for a job? And that's in personality, and sometimes arrogance may be something that will throw everything off. So just be mindful of that. Don't discuss salary or benefits in an interview. You've not been offered the job yet. You are not, you're not privy to that information. However, a recruiter, if you're in a company that has a recruiter that's calling you, they're probably going to ask you ahead of time, what's your salary, and if it fits the range of the job you're applying for. They're not going to put you forth for a job that it's not going to be beneficial both ways. During the interview is not the time to discuss that. Once you have a job offer, on the other hand, that's another story. And don't ask at the end of the interview, so do I have the job? Well, there's a lot of people interviewing, and I can't answer that question for you right now. It makes for a really uncomfortable situation, and that's for a job or an internship or whatever it is. Don't ask at the end. You could think that you did a fantastic job, and you probably did really great, but don't ask if you have the job. It just makes it awkward. So, just as a summary of interview points. Oops. So make sure you're doing your research. Make sure you practice, whether it's practice questions or in front of the mirror or with somebody. Be aware that you're the one who's in control of creating your first impressions. Dress to impress. Guys and gals, use an iron. Even though I don't know how to iron, at least take it to the dry cleaning. Look nice, brushed hair, scarves pinned right. Make sure you dress to impress. It makes a big difference. Be confident and be positive. Remember, it's okay to be nervous. It's normal, but do your best to keep that in check. And remind yourself that all of this it's part of a process, and everyone goes through it, and everyone struggles. But it is the process. So, you did your resume, you did your interview, and alhamdulillah, they called you back, and you now have a job offer, right? Congratulations, super awesome. But don't go out and celebrate just yet. You want to make sure you always have your offer in writing, whether it's through a formal letter, through an email. You want to make sure that whatever a company is promising you is actually going to happen, and having that in writing is the best way to ensure that. If you have any additional questions that came up, this is your time to ask before you're accepting a job offer. Negotiate. So a lot of people get intimidated by this idea of, a company has said, okay, here's a job for $50,000, and if you're fresh out of college, you're like, wow, $50,000, like that's a lot of money. But you know what? You need to negotiate every single time, even if it's asking for 55 or 60 or whatever it is. You go back with reasons why you think you deserve that extra money. But the worst thing that can happen is that they say, you know what, this is our pay structure and this is what it is. If it's a summer job and it's $8.25 an hour, most likely that's not going to change. It's $8.25 an hour, but you go ahead and you ask for more. I've never, ever seen a hiring manager or recruiter say, actually, never mind, we're not going to hire you because you wanted to negotiate your salary. So don't do yourself the injustice of settling for whatever they give you. Go ahead and think about, is it reasonable for me to ask more? 9 times out of 10, it is reasonable to ask for a little bit more. And the worst that happens is they say no, and they say no. It's not a big deal. You move on. Unless you know this is like your complete dream job and there's no way in heck you're ever going to turn this down, you always want to ask for time to think. Thank you so much for the offer. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited. I'd like, a couple days to just think it over and talk with my family about it. Just to make sure this is what you want, 100%. And then for me personally, this is, if you want to, I always pray istikhara for any big decision that I'm making. And when you pray it's usually like a different experience for everyone. For me, usually I either wake up the next day or the next couple of days either feeling really content with my decisions or feeling really bothered, and I'm like, oh, maybe this just doesn't feel right. Things tend to not open up and things don't happen as easily as they should. So for me personally, praying istikhara has been really beneficial anytime I'm looking to make a big decision in my life, like taking a job. But keep in mind, you may not always be offered a job that you apply for, and that's okay. Just know that there's a lot of competition out there, and even if you fit every single qualification, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that job. They're looking for a multiple list of things. Qualifications, fit, there could be a longitude, latitude of reasons of why they select you or don't select you, and if you don't get the job, that's okay. You typically get notified by mail or by phone if you are applying for like a summer job, retail job. Usually they notify you by mail. They're not going to call every single person, unfortunately, and tell them they didn't get the job. And if it's a larger corporation, you probably will get the courtesy of a phone call. Don't take it personally. It's unfortunate, but it happens to get turned down. Something that a lot of people don't take advantage of is feel free to call back and ask for some feedback. Don't say, I don't understand why I didn't get this job. I think I was the best candidate. Like, you really should have hired me. You made a mistake. But it happens. It happens. But say, you know what, I understand I didn't get this role. Is there anyone that I interviewed with that might be able to give me some feedback that it can kind of improve for my next interview? That's super impressive when I get those calls, and I'm more than happy to give the feedback. And for you, it really helps you if you can apply it to your next job interview. And then interviewing is like public speaking. It takes practice to feel comfortable and to get good at it. So the more you do it, the easier it gets. But the biggest thing is don't get discouraged. It's a learning process, and so just be patient with it. Well, how about that for time? So any questions? It doesn't matter what stage you're in, but any questions at all about this process? Yeah.
Would you have to bring anything to the interview?
So in an interview, you usually want to bring extra copies of your resume. Depending on what kind of company you're going into, if it's an internship, you probably don't need any kind of portfolio or anything like that. But usually extra copies of your resume, and maybe some water for yourself. But other than that, and yourself looking sharp, other than that, you should be good.
I'd like to share a story really quick on that question. I was interviewing someone one time, and she brought so much stuff with her, I'm not joking. She had moved into the interview room. She had laid all her stuff around. I mean, it was crazy. So I think, yeah, definitely travel light. Especially for women, if you normally carry a big purse, downsize that. Just carry a portfolio with your resume. It's really, even your phone, make sure it can fit in your pocket or something, but don't bring a lot of stuff with you. I mean, she had her stuff, laptop plugged in. I mean, she had moved in. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Simpler is better.
Yeah, travel light.
I
Yeah.
have another comment related to that. One time we interviewed someone from my department. I was part of that like group interviewing or panel or whatever you call it. And someone said that spoke Spanish. And I was there to interview, do the other half of the interview in Spanish. And the person really didn't speak well enough to, to be able to answer questions in Spanish.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself accurately. If you don't speak
I
Spanish.
didn't know that half of the interview was in Spanish, but in the resume was, can you read in Spanish? And speaking Spanish fluently, and she said yes.
And she said yes, and 9 times out of 10, usually 10 times out of 10, whatever you put in your resume is going to come out later. Usually interviewers are experts at calling out BS. So don't fluff up your interview if it's not your resume, if it's not actually reflective of you.
I have a comment and then a question too. So, like, I don't know about you guys, but this is something I learned from early in my career. Like, growing up, the only thing that I feel like I remember my dad told us was to be humble. Like, he drilled that into our head: be humble, be humble, be humble. And I don't know if we were or not, but that doesn't necessarily work when you get into the workforce. So if you're going to come into an interview and this, your voice is deep, right? And not that my parents taught us like that, but I just want to put that out there because I feel like I still struggle with that today in terms of like this concept of self-promotion, right? There is something about being modesty and lowering your gaze in certain situations and all that. Like I get that, but you have to also be really confident, right? Humble does not mean don't have confidence. It does not mean undermine your abilities. It does not mean take or discredit what you've accomplished, right? So if you have to psych yourself up before an interview to really turn on that self-promotion thing, then do that. Like, do whatever you have to do to turn that on, because a lot of us are, culturally are kind of, brought up a certain way, and then we struggle when we get into the workforce, where the guy next to us, the girl next to us, hasn't done anything, yet they are promoting themselves to be like a superstar, right? So, and we're competing with those people for jobs and opportunities and projects and stuff. So that's just something that I
Actually
learned
an
from.
excellent
Just to
point.
watch out for people.
That's an excellent point. I know someone very close to me who, growing up is maybe very humble, mashallah, super, super humble. And as she's trying to apply for colleges or get jobs or whatever, she didn't even realize all of the great things that she has done. And the ability to be able to mention those things and be proud of those things and speak up about those things makes a really big impact. And so if you struggle with that, talk to someone that's close to you and kind of say, hey, can you help me out? I'm struggling with all of the great things that I've done, but I don't think I've done that many great things. You'd be surprised what comes out of a conversation. And you need to own those things that you've done. You need to own it, and you need to, when you talk about it, just like Fareen said, I don't want to hear you talking like this. Have a voice for yourself. Put yourself out there. Be assertive, because those qualities are really going to come across really well in an interview. And you had a question?
And my other question was, and I just read an article the other day about, it was something like how recruiters either consciously or subconsciously use just the basic information on a resume to discriminate against you. So then I started thinking about the names of my children and all these things that I hadn't thought about before. But for boys whose names are like Muhammad or Ahmed, or any of these things that are especially in today's day and age, are clearly identifying with a faith that maybe people have adverse feelings towards. What would be your thoughts or your suggestions of how, and we may not completely overcome that, but how do we deal with that in today's workforce?
My personal opinion is you stay true to yourself 100%. If your name is Muhammad and you go by Muhammad, you put Muhammad on your resume. The biggest thing when I was in college, the semester before I was about to graduate, I cannot tell you how many people said, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding a job wearing your hijab. People are just not going to hire you. You want to go into big corporate environment, there's a lot of prejudice out there and you're not going to get a job. And that drove me to such a level to push myself. Alhamdulillah, I ended up getting a job offer 6 months before I graduated. And it's not because I wore my hijab or I didn't wear my hijab, but it's because I represented who I was and my capabilities and the things that I have accomplished, and I was confident in those things. And if I am not true to myself and I'm not presenting myself in that way and someone's going to be prejudiced against me, that's not a company that I want to work for. If someone is going to have an issue with my ability to represent my faith and be confident in that, that's not a company I want to work for. If they're not going to call me back because my name is Mohammed or Yusuf or Maryam, that's not a company you want to work for. Diversity is so important and gives you such an advantage, whether you're going to school or an internship or a long-term career. That's something you need to embrace. So I really recommend being true to yourself, and subhanAllah, prejudice comes along with that. That's not an opportunity that you want to be a part of. Any other questions? Well, if you guys like this session and you maybe are looking for something a little bit more, one-on-one feedback, feel free to give that feedback to the masjid. Maybe we can set up some more maybe like intimate coaching sessions for one-on-one feedback. But thank you guys for listening.